AEW star Kenny Omega versus New Japan Pro Wrestling's Will Ospreay is now official for Wrestle Kingdom 17 this coming January. We've got details on how the match came together, plus Kenny Omega's video message that aired yesterday, all the latest details on this massive news story. Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestling News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well. As always, there are plenty of news stories to get into in the world of professional wrestling. Now, I must apologize initially because over the next month or so, with the World Cup on the horizon, things are going to get a little bit crazy here on the channel because I'm tied over with United View, etc. But I promise you, I will do everything I can to still deliver that news content here on the channel, whether it's just a little bit out of the usual time slot that usually it goes in. I like to get things up at sort of 7 a.m. Eastern time and then about 3 p.m. Eastern time over there in the United States. That might not be the case for the next month or so, but I'm going to do everything I can. You have my word on that. But let's get into this story about Kenny Omega and Will Ospreay, because what some consider, I guess, a dream match is looking like, well, officially now, is a reality. Kenny Omega versus Will Ospreay is set for New Japan's Wrestle Kingdom 17 event for the IWGP United States Championship. It's scheduled for January 4th. Kenny Omega is returning to New Japan Pro Wrestling. Omega appeared via a video promo at Sunday's New Japan Stardom Historic X Over event to challenge Will Ospreay to a match at Wrestle Kingdom 17 on January 4th, 2023. Ospreay accepted the challenge and the bout for the IWGP United States Heavyweight Championship is set. In his video promo, Omega said that once AEW began, there was nothing keeping him in New Japan Pro Wrestling. He said that Ospreay replaced him and blamed Ospreay for smaller crowds and a lack of cheering at New Japan events. Omega said that some people blame the pandemic for that, but he knows there is another reason: Ospreay. Omega said he was surprised to receive a phone call from New Japan and said that he was not particularly interested in the match, but for the sake of the fans and the good of pro wrestling, he would face Ospreay at the Tokyo Dome. In a brief retort to the video, Ospreay said that he stayed with New Japan while Omega left and kept the heartbeat of the company going, then accepted the challenge. Omega, of course, has a storied history with New Japan Pro Wrestling. He last wrestled for the promotion on January 4th, 2019 in the main event of Wrestle Kingdom 13, dropping the IWGP Heavyweight Championship to Hiroshi Tanahashi on his way out of the company. Certainly, again, it's been getting so much buzz on social media. Omega just returned to the ring once again this past Saturday at Full Gear, and less than 24 hours later, he is still making headlines now in the world of New Japan Pro Wrestling. But it's now official after a day or so of people wondering when New Japan was going to make the official match announcement. Kenny Omega versus Will Ospreay for the IWGP United States Heavyweight Championship is official for New Japan Wrestle Kingdom 17. The company formally announced Ospreay defending the US title against Omega on January 4th in the Tokyo Dome after setting up the bout earlier on in the day. Now, as far as the details on how this match came together. How did this match come together? What's the relationship like between AEW and New Japan? We know the relationship between the two promotions is very good, but what's the relationship between, like, with Kenny Omega and New Japan? Because, of course, over the last few years, it's been reported that it wasn't too great. There were even reports as Omega trying to enter the country became a bit of an issue because of his heat he had with the New Japan office. Well, as I mentioned, Omega is headed back to New Japan Pro Wrestling for Wrestle Kingdom in 2023. After a 4-year absence, Fightful Select Sean Ross Sapp is reporting that conversations started as early as this summer about Omega facing Will Ospreay in New Japan Pro Wrestling. Now, what's quite interesting about this is Fightful actually did an interview with Omega back in June. This was before Forbidden Door. He was actually sort of promoting the event. And originally, Omega had hoped to be cleared to return to the ring in time for that show. It wasn't the case, but the reports were at the time that that would really plant the seeds for this future Omega versus Ospreay match. Of course, that didn't happen. But during the interview that Fightful did with Omega in June before Forbidden Door, Omega was in work mode, planting the seeds for a match even before his return ahead of AEW All Out. However, the match wasn't finalized by them. Fightful Select are reporting that Rocky Romero, as per usual, he's always the link between promotions of New Japan and other promotions around the world, but it was Rocky Romero, as per usual, who played a huge role in facilitating the match and helping get it cleared. Romero has been a huge factor in New Japan's global expansion and their positive relationships with numerous companies. At one point, Romero was said to be in frequent contact with AEW owner and president Tony Khan to make deals happen. Those familiar with the situation claim that the deal only got finalized within the past 2 or 3 weeks, despite conversations happening over the course of the last several months. Now, you may say, well, how could these negotiations be finalized over the last few weeks when the background of the brawl-out situation has been going on? It was only until recently that Kenny Omega was suspended by AEW and he couldn't pick up outside commitments because of his suspension. Well, of course, his suspension did actually finish about 2 or 3 weeks ago because he, alongside Matt and Nick Jackson, have been backstage at recent AEW Dynamite tapings before returning this past Saturday at Full Gear. So one could suggest and one could assume that these negotiations did get finalized, and the match was finalized once Omega was officially reinstated to All Elite Wrestling. As I mentioned, the suspension in relation to the incident after All Out, the brawl with CM Punk, Ace Steel, and involving the Young Bucks, didn't kill the talks even for that time being, but Fightful have heard that it certainly slowed things down. I think from the perspective of New Japan Pro Wrestling and AEW, they had hoped that these negotiations would be finalized right after, really. He had returned to All Out back in early September. Of course, that wasn't the case, so things have kind of come together fairly quickly when it comes to this one. But certainly, in some people's perspective, it's a dream match. You've got, as Kenny Omega mentions, you've essentially got the guy that replaced him in that spot in New Japan Pro Wrestling and Will Ospreay, and you've got Kenny Omega. And this is going to be a match, I think, that from a Meltzer perspective, it will get the 6 stars. There's no doubt it will deliver, and it will no doubt be a match that certainly a lot of people are going to be talking about. I think that some people may argue it's not their style. You know, people watch Will Ospreay matches. I can't even sit here and say I'm the biggest fan of Will Ospreay's style of wrestling. It's too choreographed for me. It's too, not believable. I like to see a bit of grit. I like to see a bit of, I don't like to see, again, spots that are just very heavily choreographed, like I'm watching a fight scene. Some people do like that, though, and I'm never going to criticize people for liking that. I think that, pro wrestling's about taste. Pro wrestling's about opinion. And there are so many different styles of pro wrestling, and there are so many different styles of what people like to watch. People like to watch Will Ospreay matches. I'm a big fan of Kenny Omega. I love Kenny Omega matches, and I love it when Omega does get into that more physical and more, again, gritty kind of match. So Omega returning to New Japan's massive as well. He was, he's not the centerpiece. You could argue Kazuchika Okada has been the centerpiece for several years at this point, but certainly as the top foreign talent, that was always Kenny Omega, and he was almost the top homegrown, foreign talent. Yes, Omega had been in Deep South Wrestling with WWE, and he'd been around Canada and the United States, but certainly he can speak Japanese. He'd been with the company such a long period of time, graduated from the junior heavyweight division into the heavyweight division, similar to a Will Ospreay. Their careers really do parallel each other, and I think that there's no stretch that this match could easily be and may absolutely be determined as the best match of 2023. And I know that people would say, oh, and how can you say that? The match hasn't even happened yet. But certainly, given these guys' track records of putting on spectacular matches, it will be fantastic. Now, it's not going to be the main event of Wrestle Kingdom. That will be for the IWGP Heavyweights Championship. I think it is going to be Jay White versus Kazuchika Okada. But certainly this will be the match I think a lot of people will be talking about and will steal the show. Now, from an AEW perspective, it must be said, they're holding a Dynamite taping during that date. So Kenny Omega will not be part of Dynamite. And that is why we are not having one of the best of 7 series matches between the Elite and Death Triangle during that date, because Kenny Omega's not going to be in the country. Which does, I suggest, open up the possibility of not just Kenny Omega being involved in that show, also the Young Bucks too. Now, Tony Khan in his post-Full Gear press conference said that there wasn't going to be many top AEW stars at Wrestle Kingdom. He said that there might be a presence of AEW at the show, but there wouldn't be many top stars at the show because AEW had a taping that day. But with Kenny Omega not being on the show, that's a top star. The Young Bucks have been heavily rumored to be participating in Wrestle Kingdom, so they could be showing up. Chris Jericho, we know his deal with New Japan Pro Wrestling. He likes to do Wrestle Kingdom shows, so Jericho going over there could be a possibility. We know Jon Moxley's also got a deal with New Japan Pro Wrestling. It would be surprising if Moxley wasn't there. And in addition to that, Bryan Danielson has spoken openly about wanting to do a match in the Tokyo Dome at Wrestle Kingdom. Now, could all of those talents be participating in Wrestle Kingdom on that day? I would suggest probably not. But at the same time, I think if you lose a Bryan Danielson, not that that's not a big impact on the show, but I think the show can go on without any of these people, frankly. It would just be a concern about the ratings. But at the same time, who do I expect to be there? I would expect the Bucks now to be there, honestly. Other names, Moxley's just always there, but I don't know what match he would necessarily have. Jericho, again, I would think he could be there, maybe. Danielson is one I hope would be there. Out of all of those names, we've seen Jericho in New Japan, we've seen Moxley in New Japan. Having Kenny Omega be back for the first time in 4 years is significant, considering, again, the heat he had for leaving the company when he did. But seeing Bryan Danielson compete for New Japan Pro Wrestling would be something to see inside the Tokyo Dome. So I hope to see that, but I guess as we get closer to the event in January, we're going to find out more and more. But there you go, guys. That's the latest about Kenny Omega versus Will Ospreay. Certainly a match that has been rumored and planned for a long period of time, and next January it's going to come to fruition. Let me know your thoughts on this breaking news story, this evolving news story in the comment section below. What are your thoughts on Omega versus Ospreay? What are your thoughts on Will Ospreay's style of wrestling? What are your thoughts on this match? Is it going to be the match of the year in 2023? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Be sure to smash a like on the like button. Be sure to subscribe, bottom right hand corner, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.